Admiral Park So-jin stood in the deepest military bunker on Earth 3 kilometers beneath the city of Seoul. The Seoul Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as hundreds of officers monitored screens that showed every ship, every satellite, every defensive position in the solar system. She had been waiting for this message for 30 years. Captain Lee Min-ho rushed across the command floor, his young face pale with worry. "Admiral, we have confirmed transmission from Ambassador Kang. The Galactic Council voted 46-1 for total war against humanity. They are mobilizing their combined fleets for an assault on Earth." So-jin closed her eyes for a moment and felt the weight of 4 billion human lives settling on her shoulders. She had fought pirates in the outer colonies and defended merchant convoys from alien raiders, but this was different. This was the survival of her entire species. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Intelligence estimates 30 days before their main fleet reaches the outer defense perimeter." Captain Lee replied, "The Council commands over 10,000 warships, including dreadnoughts, capable of cracking planets in half. Our current defense fleet numbers 312 vessels. The numbers were impossible. Any military academy would teach that such odds meant certain defeat. But Admiral Park smiled coldly because the Council had made one crucial mistake. They thought they knew what humanity was capable of. They had no idea what Earth had been building. In secret signal all department heads, she ordered. "Priority Alpha meeting in Conference Room 1. Activate the Prometheus protocols. Bring all ghost ship commanders online and send word to the colonies. Operation Wildfire begins now." The command center fell silent as officers realized what those orders meant. The Prometheus protocols had never been tested at full scale. The ghost ships were experimental vessels that might not work in real combat, and Operation Wildfire meant that every human colony would begin guerrilla warfare against Council targets across the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yu-na looked up from her tactical display with wide eyes. "Admiral, the casualty projections for full Prometheus activation show massive losses across multiple star systems. Are we really going to use weapons that could destabilize entire solar systems?" So-jin turned to face the younger woman, and her expression was harder than diamond. "Lieutenant Commander, the Galactic Council just voted to exterminate every human man, woman, and child in the universe. They want to wipe us from existence completely, take our colonies and divide our technology among themselves." She paused, letting those words sink into every person in the room. Then she continued, "They think we are weak because we are new to space. They think our ships are converted cargo vessels with weak weapons. They think our colonies are farming settlements with no defenses. They are wrong about everything." Admiral walked to the main display showing the positions of Council fleets throughout the galaxy. "For 30 years we have been preparing for exactly this scenario. While they celebrated their superiority, we built weapons that break every treaty we ever signed. While they planned our destruction, we placed assets throughout their territory. While they underestimated us, we became the most dangerous species in galactic history." Captain Lee stepped forward. "Admiral, what are your orders?" So-jin turned to address the entire command center. "Activate all stellar hammers. Bring the lunar weapons online. Deploy every ghost ship we have built. Wake up all sleeper agents in Council territory and send this message to every human commander in the galaxy. The Council wants a war, they will get one. But it will not be the war they expect, deep beneath the lunar surface." Engineer Commander Song Tae-hyun received the activation orders in his hidden facility. The stellar hammers had been disguised as mining equipment for 15 years, but now their true purpose would be revealed. He watched as massive blast doors opened in what appeared to be solid rock, revealing 7 enormous railgun barrels pointed toward the stars. Each stellar hammer could accelerate projectiles to 90% of light speed with enough kinetic energy to shatter moons. The weapons violated 17 different galactic treaties, but treaties meant nothing when facing extinction. Song smiled grimly as targeting Computers locked onto Council homeworld coordinates. In the asteroid belt, Captain Cho Jae-wook felt his experimental stealth ship come alive around him. The Shadowfall had been hidden in a fake mining station for years, waiting for this moment. His crew of 30 were all volunteers who knew they might not survive the coming battle, but they also knew their mission could save humanity. Navigation set course for the Proxima system, he ordered. Operations confirm all quantum torpedo loadouts. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Hee-jin, checked her displays. All torpedoes armed and ready, Captain. We carry enough firepower to destroy their entire advance fleet throughout human space. Similar scenes played out on colony worlds that looked like peaceful farming settlements. Massive defense turrets rose from hidden underground positions. Merchant ships revealed weapon bays that had been concealed for decades. Civilian space stations deployed swarms of automated fighters that had been built in secret. The planet New Korea looked like a quiet agricultural world to Council spies, but beneath its surface lay the largest weapons manufacturing complex outside Earth orbit. Governor Kim Jun-ho watched as production facilities came online, churning out ammunition and military supplies that would arm human forces across the galaxy. On the mining colony of New Busan, Director Lee Soo-min activated defensive systems that transformed asteroid processing equipment into long-range artillery. The Council believed humans were farmers and miners. They never suspected that every human settlement was a fortress, waiting for war back on Earth. Admiral So-jin received reports from across human territory. Every ghost ship was operational. Every stellar hammer was ready for firing. Every colony had confirmed readiness for asymmetric warfare. The Council expected to face 300 lightly armed vessels. Instead, they would face an entire civilization that had spent generations preparing for total war. The final piece of the puzzle was Operation Wildfire. For decades, human merchants, diplomats, and tourists had traveled throughout Council space, smiling and trading and making friends. Nobody suspected that each one was a carefully trained agent, placing weapons caches, establishing communication networks, and identifying targets for future operations. Communications Officer Park Dae-young looked up from her console. Admiral, we have confirmed activation signals from 237 wildfire cells across 40 different Council systems. Our people are in position and awaiting orders. So-jin nodded grimly. The Council voted for war against Earth. Believing they faced a primitive species with limited technology, they never imagined that humanity had been watching them, studying them, and preparing to destroy them since the day they first met. Now the trap was ready to spring. The ghost ships would strike first, eliminating Council command vessels with weapons they could not see. The stellar hammers would target their homeworlds with projectiles that could not be stopped. The wildfire agents would cripple their infrastructure from within, while human colonies fought with defenses that should not exist. The Council thought they were hunting sheep. Instead, they had awakened the most dangerous predator in galactic history, Admiral Park. So-jin looked at the tactical display showing enemy fleet positions and smiled coldly. "Let them come," she whispered. "Let them learn why declaring war on humanity was the last mistake they will ever make." In the cold darkness of space between Mars and Jupiter, something that had been sleeping for 15 years began to wake up. The object looked like an ordinary asteroid mining station, broadcasting routine reports about ore extraction and mineral processing. But as Admiral Park's orders reached the outer solar system, the station revealed its true nature. Massive blast doors opened in what appeared to be solid rock, and something impossible emerged from the hidden chamber. The ghost ship Shadowfall slipped into normal space like a whisper made of metal and death. Captain Cho Jae-wook watched his instruments as the experimental stealth drive engaged perfectly. Around him, his crew of 30 worked in deadly silence. The ship was invisible to every known scanning technology in the galaxy. Human scientists had spent decades studying how light behaved, how energy moved through space, and how to bend those rules. The Council had never developed stealth technology because their ancient treaties forbade such weapons. They had no idea how to fight enemies they could not see. Navigation set course for the Alpha Centauri system. Captain J. Wook ordered quietly. "We have a Council patrol fleet to eliminate." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Park Hye-jin, smiled coldly as she checked her displays. "All quantum torpedoes ready. Captain 18, warheads, each one capable of tearing holes in space-time itself. The enemy will never see us coming." The quantum torpedoes were another violation of galactic law. They used principles of physics that most species considered too dangerous to weaponize, but humanity faced extinction, and dangerous times required dangerous weapons. On Earth's Moon Engineer Commander Song Tae-hyun supervised the final preparations of humanity's most terrible weapon. The 7 stellar hammers looked like simple mining equipment to orbital satellites, but they were actually the largest railguns ever constructed. Each barrel was 5 kilometers long and powered by fusion reactors. Hidden deep underground, the projectiles were simple chunks of dense metal, but when accelerated to 90% of light speed, they became unstoppable forces of destruction. A single shot could shatter moons, crack planets, or turn entire fleets. Into expanding clouds of plasma engineer Kim Da-yoon ran final systems checks on Hammer Number 1, all targeting computers locked onto Council homeworld coordinates. She reported power levels at maximum. "We can reach any target within 500 light years." Tae-hyun nodded grimly. The stellar hammers violated 17 different treaties and would be considered weapons of mass destruction by any civilized species. But the Council had voted for humanity's complete extinction. All civilized. Rules had ended the moment they made that decision. Meanwhile, on the agricultural colony of New Korea, something extraordinary was happening. Governor Kim Jun-ho watched as peaceful farmland transformed into the largest military-industrial complex. Outside, Earth orbit hidden factories rose from underground chambers, while disguised grain silos opened to reveal long-range missile batteries. For 20 years, New Korea had exported food to other human colonies while secretly producing weapons, ammunition, and military supplies. The Council spies who occasionally visited saw only farms and farmers. They never suspected that every agricultural worker was also a trained soldier director. Park Min-jung supervised the activation of production. Facility 7, which had been disguised as a food processing plant. All assembly lines operational. She reported, "We can produce 10,000 quantum torpedoes per day, along with ammunition for every weapon system in the human fleet." Similar scenes played out across human space. On the mining world of New Busan, director Lee Soo-min watched as asteroid processing equipment transformed into artillery capable of destroying ships in orbit. The massive ore crushers became railguns, while facilities began producing exotic materials for advanced weapons. Every human colony told the same story. Peaceful settlements that were actually military fortresses, civilian industries that could switch to weapons production in hours, farmers and miners who were also soldiers waiting for the call to war. The planet New Ulsan appeared to be a quiet research colony studying alien plant life, but beneath its surface lay the galaxy's most advanced weapons laboratory Dr. Kim Hae-young activated. Production systems that had been dormant for years, all prototype weapons ready for deployment. She announced gravity manipulation devices, temporal disruption fields, and molecular disassembly beams. Everything the Council considers impossible or forbidden. The Council believed in following rules. They thought civilized species would never use certain types of weapons. They had built their entire military strategy around assumptions about what their enemies would and would not do. Humanity was about to prove all those assumptions wrong. On the trading station, new Incheon Captain Lee Jae-min received his activation orders. The station looked like a simple commercial hub where merchants from different species could meet and trade. But hidden behind the shops and restaurants were weapons storage facilities that had been stocked for decades. All wildfire teams report ready, he announced. 200 sleeper agents throughout Council space are waiting for orders they have access to. Communication networks, power grids, transportation systems, and government facilities. For 30 years, humans had traveled throughout the galaxy as merchants, diplomats, scientists, and tourists. Every one of them had been carefully selected and trained. They smiled and traded and made friends while secretly mapping enemy territory, identifying targets and placing weapons where they would be needed. The Council had welcomed these human visitors, believing they were simple representatives of a primitive species. They never suspected that each friendly trader was actually a highly trained saboteur, gathering intelligence and preparing for war. Back on Earth, Admiral Park. So-Jin received status reports from across human space. Every ghost ship operational. Every stellar hammer ready. Every colony armed and prepared. Every wildfire agent in position. The trap had taken 30 years to build, but it was finally ready. Captain Lee. Minho looked at the tactical displays with amazement. Admiral, our industrial capacity is 3 times what we reported to the Council. Our defensive capabilities are beyond anything they have imagined, and our offensive weapons, So-Jin finished his sentence, violate every treaty we ever signed and break every rule of civilized warfare. The Council wanted to destroy us completely, so we prepared to do the same to them. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yu-na studied intelligence reports from Council territory. They have over 10,000 ships, Admiral, including dreadnoughts that can destroy planets. How can we possibly win against such odds? The Admiral smiled coldly. Lieutenant Commander, they have 10,000 ships designed to fight enemies who follow the same rules they do. We have weapons they have never seen, technologies they never developed, and strategies they cannot understand. They expect a conventional war between civilized species. She paused, looking at the star maps showing Council fleet positions. Instead, they will face total warfare from an enemy that has spent generations preparing to destroy them completely. Every ship they send will be hunted by invisible predators. Every world they control will be sabotaged from within. Every assumption they make will be wrong. The human war machine had awakened. After decades of careful preparation, the Council thought they were facing a few hundred lightly armed vessels. Instead, they would face an entire civilization that had been designed from the ground up for one purpose: winning a war against impossible odds in the darkness between stars. Ghost ships moved toward their targets carrying weapons that bent the laws of physics. On hidden worlds, massive guns prepared to fire projectiles across hundreds of light years. Throughout Council space, human agents checked their equipment and waited for orders to begin the systematic destruction of enemy civilization. The Council had voted for war, expecting an easy victory over primitive newcomers. They were about to discover that humanity had been planning their destruction since the day the two civilizations first met. The war was about to begin, and it would not be the war anyone expected. The giant space station hung in the darkness between stars like a metal city floating in nothing. The Galactic Council headquarters was bigger than most planets and older than human civilization itself. Inside its crystal halls, 47 different alien species had gathered for the most important meeting in 1,000 years. Ambassador Kang Dae-ho walked through the long corridors toward the main chamber. His black suit felt heavy on his shoulders, and his hands were sweating inside his gloves. He had been the human representative to the Council for 5 years now. But today felt different. Today felt dangerous. The other aliens barely looked at him as he passed. Some whispered in their strange languages, while others just stared with eyes that held no friendship. The humans had only joined the Council 50 years ago, making them the newest members, and nobody trusted newcomers, especially newcomers who had conquered 12 star systems in just 5 decades. Dae-ho entered the massive Council chamber and felt his breath catch in his throat. The room was enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Floating platforms held the representatives of each species, and in the center stood a podium where speakers would address the assembly. The human section was small and isolated near the back. Deho took his seat and looked around at the other delegates. The bird people called Aviani sat on high perches, their golden feathers gleaming under the artificial lights. Their leader, Captain Skyros, had sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Across the chamber, the Saurians occupied a heated section that matched their reptilian needs. Elder Vorthak was their speaker, and Deho could see his green scales were darker than usual, which meant anger among his people. The old lizard had never liked humans, and made no secret of it. The crystal beings known as lithoids stood like living statues in their section. They communicated through musical sounds that most other species needed translators to understand. Even the peaceful aquarians in their water-filled tanks seemed agitated today, their jellyfish-like bodies pulsing with worried colors. A deep sound echoed through the chamber, and all conversation stopped. Elder Vorthak rose from his platform and moved to the central podium. His clawed feet clicked against the metal floor, and his tail dragged behind him like a weapon. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had ruled for centuries. The humans have broken the sacred laws of expansion. They have colonized 12 systems without asking permission from this council. They have built weapons that violate our peace treaties. They refuse to share their advanced technology with other species as required by galactic law. Angry sounds filled the chamber. The Aviani chirped and screeched their agreement. The Ursine delegate, who looked like a giant bear crossed with a rhinoceros, slammed his massive fist on his platform, making the whole structure shake. Even the normally quiet crystalline beings chimed in harmony with sounds that hurt human ears. Deho felt his heart racing as he listened to the accusations. Some were true. Humans had colonized rapidly and built powerful weapons, but they had good reasons. The galaxy was dangerous, and Earth needed strong colonies and defenses to survive. The council members had millions of years to establish themselves, but humans were still new and vulnerable. The human ambassador stood up, slowly feeling every eye in the chamber focus on him. When he spoke, his voice carried across the vast space through the translation systems that let all species understand each other. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, we humans have done nothing but defend ourselves and expand as any growing species must. Our colonies harm no one and take nothing from established civilizations. Our weapons are purely defensive, designed to protect our people from pirates and hostile forces. We share what technology we can while protecting our people's security. The response was immediate and furious. Delegates shouted and roared and made sounds that had no human equivalent. The Ursine delegate stood to his full 3-meter height and pointed. An accusing finger at Deho lies the bear, like alien bellowed. Human ships attack our trade routes. Human colonies steal resources that rightfully belong to species who discovered them first. Human weapons are more advanced than anything we have. Seen in centuries, this proves they are planning conquest. More shouts filled the chamber, and Deho realized the situation was hopeless. The other species had already made up their minds. This meeting was not about justice or truth. It was about fear. Fear of humanity's rapid growth and technological advancement. Fear that these newcomers might challenge the established order. Elder Vorthak raised his hand for silence, and the chamber gradually quieted. The accusation is clear. The reptilian leader announced, "The humans have violated multiple treaties and refused to submit to council authority." The question before us is simple. Do we allow this behavior to continue, or do we take action to preserve galactic peace? The voting began immediately. Each species announced their decision in their own language, while the translation systems converted the words for everyone to understand. The Saurians voted for war. The Avianii voted for war. The Ursine voted for war. One by one, 46 species declared their intention to destroy humanity. Only the humans voted against War Elder. Vorthak smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "The vote is complete," he announced. 46 species vote for military action against the human colonies and homeworld. One species votes against the decision is final and binding. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council will move against Earth within one standard galactic month. The chamber erupted in celebration. Many species had waited decades for this moment. The humans had grown too powerful too quickly, and now they would be crushed like all upstart civilizations before them. Their technology would be claimed, their colonies divided among the victors and their homeworld turned into a monument to Council. Power Day-Ho sat in stunned silence as the reality hit him. 46 interstellar civilizations with thousands of warships had just declared war on humanity. Earth had maybe 300 military vessels, and most of those were converted cargo. Ships with weapons bolted on. The odds were impossible. But as he watched the celebrating aliens, something cold settled in his chest. These creatures thought they knew humans. They thought Earth would surrender or beg for mercy. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. The human ambassador rose from his seat with dignity and walked toward the exit. Nobody tried to stop him. They were too busy planning how to divide humanity's territory among themselves. As he reached the door, Day-Ho activated his emergency communicator and spoke 4 words that would change galactic history. "Command. This is Ambassador Kang. The Council has declared war. Execute Protocol 7 immediately." The message would take 3 days to reach Earth through the quantum communication network, but Day-Ho knew his people would be ready. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council 50 years ago, but they had been preparing for this day much longer. These aliens thought they were destroying a weak young species. They were. About to learn why that was the biggest mistake in the history of the galaxy. As Day-Ho left the council chambers behind, he could still hear the sounds of celebration echoing through the corridors. 46 civilizations were planning humanity's destruction. They had ships that could crack planets, weapons that could sterilize worlds and soldiers from dozens of warrior species. But they had never fought humans before. They had no idea what was coming. The Council's advance fleet arrived at the edge of human space with supreme confidence. 500 warships under the command of Admiral Zephyros, the proud Aviani whose golden feathers marked him as nobility among his bird-like people. His flagship, the Sky Render, was a kilometer-long battlecruiser that had never known defeat. "Human vessels detected," reported his tactical officer. 37 ships holding position near the Epsilon station. "They're not running." Zephyros felt a moment of surprise. Intelligence reports suggested humans were cowards who would flee at the first sign of superior force. Yet here they stood, outnumbered 15 to 1, waiting for battle. Perhaps they had more courage than expected. It would make their destruction more satisfying. "All ships, advance to engagement range. Prepare to demonstrate Council superiority." But as the Council fleet moved forward, something impossible happened. Stars began to disappear, not dimming or flickering, simply vanishing from sensors as if they had never existed. The Aviani's superior eyesight could detect nothing but their instruments screamed warnings of massive objects moving through space. Captain Cho Jae-wook smiled coldly as the Shadow Fall and her sister ships moved into position. The Council had never developed stealth technology because their treaties forbade it. They had no idea how to fight enemies they couldn't see. "All ghost ships. This is Shadow Fall. Target their command vessels. Fire on my mark." His finger hovered over the weapons release. Around him, his crew prepared to make history. The quantum torpedoes struck without warning. Zephyros watched in horror as 3 of his heavy cruisers simply ceased to exist, torn apart by weapons that bent space-time itself. His flagship shuddered as something invisible raked its hull with impossible firepower. "Return fire!" he screamed. "All ships, random dispersal pattern, find those ships." But how do you fight ghosts? The Council fleet fired blindly into empty space while their ships died one by one. Their formation collapsed into chaos as captains tried to protect vessels they couldn't see attacking enemies that didn't appear on any sensor. From the lunar surface, Engineer Commander Song Tai-hyun watched the battle through long-range sensors. Hammers 1 through 3, target the enemy flagship. Fire when ready. The projectiles took 8 minutes to cross the distance at near light speed. When they arrived, they hit with the force of nuclear weapons. The mighty Skyrender broke apart like a child's toy, its pieces scattered across 1,000 kilometers of space. The surviving council ships fled in terror, carrying word back to their leaders. Humanity had drawn first blood, and it tasted like victory. The emergency session of the Galactic Council erupted in chaos as the survivors of Admiral Skyros' fleet delivered their impossible reports. The great chamber that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations for thousands of years had never seen such pandemonium. Delegates screamed in their own languages while holographic displays showed the unthinkable, entire council warships destroyed by invisible attackers. Elder Vorthak stood at the central podium. His reptilian scales darkened to deep crimson, which indicated barely controlled rage among his people. The massive Saurian leader had ruled his species for over 2 centuries, but he had never faced a situation like this. These humans dare to use forbidden weapons against us. He roared his voice, carrying across the vast chamber. They break every treaty, every law we have established to maintain peace in this galaxy. They must be crushed completely before their disease spreads to other species. The Ursine delegate who stood 3 meters tall and resembled a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, slammed his massive fist against his platform, making the entire structure shake. We offered them a quick, honorable death. Instead, they choose to fight with the weapons of extinct civilizations. They have violated every principle of civilized warfare. Commander Swiftwing, the young Aviani who had survived the massacre, stood before the assembly. His golden feathers dulled with shame and trauma. When he spoke, his voice trembled with remembered fear. Honorable council members, I witnessed impossible things. Human ships that cannot be detected by any sensor technology, weapons that tear holes in space itself, creating gravity fields that crush our vessels like empty shells. They fight as if death means nothing to them, as if they welcome destruction rather than surrender. The crystalline lithoids chimed in harmonics that translated to deep concern through the universal translators. If humans possess such advanced technology, what else have they hidden from us? Our intelligence estimates may be completely worthless. The peaceful Aquarians pulsed with worried colors as their representatives spoke through translation devices. Perhaps we should reconsider this war. The humans have clearly been preparing for decades. Maybe we can negotiate some kind of settlement. Never, Elder. Vorthak's roar silenced the entire chamber. They have spilled council blood. They have used weapons banned by every civilized species. They must be made an example of, or every minor race in the galaxy will think they can defy our authority. Admiral Scales of Iron. The Saurian military commander stepped forward to address the assembly-honored delegates. Our initial intelligence was clearly inadequate. The humans have hidden their true capabilities for decades, but we still possess overwhelming numerical superiority. He activated a tactical display showing ship counts throughout Council space. Our combined fleets number over 8,000 vessels, including planet-killer dreadnoughts that can sterilize entire worlds. The humans may have surprised our advanced forces, but they cannot withstand the full might of our civilization. The debate continued for hours, with some species calling for negotiation, while others demanded total war. The crystalline beings argued that humanity might have technologies worth studying rather than destroying. The peaceful water dwellers suggested that fear was driving the council toward unnecessary conflict, but Elder Vorthak and his allies had made their decision. They could not allow any species to believe they could defy council authority, especially not newcomers who had been in space for barely 50 years. The reputation of galactic civilization itself was at stake. The final vote was closer than the first but still decisive. 31 species voted to escalate the war to total annihilation, 15 voted for negotiation or withdrawal. The largest military force in recorded galactic history began, mobilizing with one purpose: ensuring that humanity would never again threaten the established order. Over 2,000 ships from dozens of different species converged on staging areas throughout Council space. The Saurian contribution included their planet-killing dreadnoughts, each one capable of turning entire worlds into molten slag. The Aviani provided their fastest interceptors designed to hunt down fleeing enemies. The Ursine offered their heavy assault ships built like flying fortresses. Even species that had voted against the war were required to contribute forces as per Council law. The reluctant Aquarians sent their defensive vessels, while the concerned Lithoids provided their crystal ships that could survive almost any attack. Every member species would participate in humanity's destruction. Admiral Scales of Iron took command of the massive fleet from his flagship, Iron Talon, a dreadnought that was larger than most space stations. He studied the tactical displays, showing human territory with cold calculation. The primitive humans surprised our advanced forces with hidden weapons, he announced to his fleet commanders. But surprise only works once. We now know they possess stealth technology and exotic weapons. We can adapt our tactics accordingly. His intelligence officer, Commander Sharpclaw, pointed to the star maps showing human colonies. Sir, our scouts report unusual energy signatures from every human settlement. It appears their civilian installations may actually be disguised military bases. Good, replied the Admiral. That means we can destroy them without violating the laws regarding non-combatants. Every human world will be considered a legitimate military target. What the Council commanders did not know was that their communications were being intercepted by human intelligence networks throughout their territory. Every plan, every movement, every tactical discussion was being recorded and transmitted back to Earth through quantum channels that the aliens had never discovered. On Earth, Admiral Park So-Jin received detailed reports about Council preparations with grim satisfaction. They are mobilizing 8,000 ships, she announced to her command staff, including their most powerful dreadnoughts. The largest military force in galactic history is being assembled to destroy us. Captain Lee Min-ho studied the enemy fleet compositions. Admiral, their firepower advantage is overwhelming. Even with our advanced weapons, how can we possibly survive against such numbers? So-Jin smiled coldly. Captain, they are still thinking like civilized beings. They believe this will be a conventional war between military forces. They plan to attack our colonies, defeat our fleets, and force Earth to surrender. She turned to address her staff. The Council has no idea what kind of war they have actually started. They think they are fighting a primitive species with a few hidden weapons. Instead, they are about to face an enemy that has spent generations preparing to destroy galactic civilization itself. Lieutenant Commander Kim Yu-na looked at intelligence reports showing Council industrial capacity. Admiral, even if we win the first few battles, they can build replacement ships faster than we can. Destroy them. Their manufacturing base spans dozens of worlds. That assumes their worlds will still exist, replied Admiral Park. The Council voted for total war against humanity. They are about to discover what total war actually means when humans fight it deep in hidden facilities throughout human space. Weapons that violated every law of physics prepared for deployment. On distant colonies, defense systems that should not exist came online. Throughout Council territory, sleeper agents received final orders for Operation Wildfire. The Council was mobilizing for conventional warfare between civilized species. Humanity was preparing for something much darker. The aliens were about to learn that when you vote for the complete destruction of human civilization, humans vote to end everything you have ever built. The largest fleet in galactic history was moving toward Earth expecting victory. But Admiral Park So-Jin knew something. The Council did not. The coming battle would not determine who ruled the galaxy. It would determine whether galactic civilization would survive at all. Admiral Park So-jin stood in the command center 3 kilometers beneath Seoul as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Council fleet was still 2 days away from Earth, but humanity had already begun its response. On her main display, a tactical map showed the location of every Council world, every military installation, every government center that held their ancient civilization together. The time had come to show the galaxy what total war actually meant when humans waged it, Admiral. All ghost ships report ready for Operation Decapitation, announced Captain Lee Min-ho. His voice was steady, but his eyes showed the weight of what they were about to unleash. Stellar hammers locked on primary targets, added Engineer Commander Song. Tae-hyun, through the communication link. We can reach their homeworlds from here. The projectiles will arrive in 6 hours. So-jin looked at the star map one final time. The Council had voted for humanity's complete extinction, believing they faced a primitive species with limited technology. They had no idea they were about to challenge a civilization that had spent 50 years studying galactic weaknesses and preparing for this exact moment. Execute Operation Decapitation. She ordered all units, weapons free. Show them what happens when you vote for war against Earth. Across the galaxy, humanity struck, like lightning made of death and fury, on the Saurian homeworld. Elder Vorthak's government complex erupted in flames as the ghost ship, Shadowfall, materialized in orbit. Captain Cho Jae-wook watched through his viewports as quantum torpedoes eliminated the ancient pyramid where Council leaders had ruled for centuries. The massive structure collapsed into rubble, taking with it 2,000 years of Saurian political history. Your species voted to exterminate mine, he said quietly into the communication channel. Now learn what extinction actually looks like. The Aviani capital of Golden Sky City had floated in the clouds of their homeworld for millennia, but it fell to Earth in minutes as Captain Kim Tae-ho's vessel Vengeance used gravity manipulation weapons to crush their delicate crystalline towers. The proud bird people, who had never known defeat, watched their civilization crumble from the sky on worlds the Council thought were safely behind their defense lines. Human sleeper agents activated weapons that had been hidden for decades. Director Park Min-jung emerged from her cover as a simple merchant on the Ursine homeworld and triggered explosives that brought down their military command centers. The massive bear-like creatures found their fortress cities collapsing as human-designed nanobots ate through metal walls like acid. The crystalline lithoids discovered that their perfect geometric cities were vulnerable to harmonic weapons, specifically designed to shatter silicon-based structures. Agent Kim Da-eun broadcast frequencies that turned their beautiful crystal spires into dust, while their inhabitants watched in horror as millennia of architectural achievement vanished in minutes. But the most terrible weapons were yet to come. From Earth's moon, the 7 stellar hammers fired in sequence, their projectiles crossing hundreds of light years in hours. When they arrived at Council homeworlds, the impacts triggered solar flares that sterilized entire planets. The Saurian homeworld shuddered as kinetic energy equivalent to asteroid strikes turned their cities into craters. Aviani homeworld lost its atmosphere as lunar projectiles punched through the planetary crust, triggering volcanic eruptions that filled the sky with poison gas. The proud bird people who had ruled the skies for millions of years died gasping. In the toxic air of their own world, Admiral Scales of Iron received panicked messages from across Council territory as he led the massive fleet toward Earth. His tactical displays showed impossible reports. Government centers destroyed homeworlds, under attack. Military installations eliminated. How could humans strike so far so quickly with such devastating effect? This is impossible, he roared at his communication officers. How can they attack our core worlds while their main fleet is trapped in the Sol system? Our intelligence said they had 300 lightly armed ships. The answer came from the few Council intelligence officers who had survived humanity's surgical strikes. For 50 years, every human merchant ship, every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange had been a carefully disguised military operation. Humans had placed weapons agents and monitoring stations throughout Council space, all while smiling and trading and pretending to be grateful for membership in galactic civilization. They had been planning this war since the day they first encountered the Council. Every treaty they signed included secret provisions. Every trade agreement contained hidden clauses. Every diplomatic meeting gathered intelligence for the inevitable day when the Council would try to destroy them. Commander Sharpclaw stared at intelligence reports with growing horror. "Sir, they have been infiltrating our territory for decades. Every human we welcomed as a friend was actually a spy or saboteur preparing for total war. They have weapon caches on over 300 Council worlds. The reports kept getting worse. Human colonies that appeared to be peaceful. Farming settlements revealed massive defense grids that could destroy. Fleets, merchant vessels, shed their disguises to become heavily armed warships. Civilian space stations deployed weapons that violated every known law of physics. Admiral Scales of Iron watched his tactical display as red indicators showed the systematic destruction of Council civilization. Their government centers were gone. Their military commands were eliminated. Their industrial capacity was being methodically destroyed by enemies they had never suspected existed on Earth. Admiral Park, So Jin, received final reports from across the galaxy. Every primary target eliminated, she announced to her command staff, Council government has effectively ceased to exist. Their military command structure is destroyed. Their industrial capacity is offline, Captain. Lee Min-ho looked at the strategic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. Admiral, they still have 8,000 ships heading toward Earth. Even without central command, they represent massive firepower. Sojin smiled coldly. Captain, those 8,000 ships belong to species whose home worlds are burning. Their governments are dead. Their families are under attack. What do you think will happen when they receive word of what humanity has done to everything they fought to protect? The answer came within hours. As news of the attacks reached the Council fleet, ships began breaking formation and turning back toward their home systems. Captains abandoned the assault on Earth to defend worlds that might already be dead. The mighty armada that had been assembled to destroy humanity scattered like leaves in a storm. Some species tried to maintain unit cohesion, but panic spread through their ranks. The Aviani discovered their floating cities had fallen to Earth. The Saurians learned their ancient pyramids were rubble. The Ursines watched their fortress worlds crumble into dust. Commander Swiftwing, now senior officer of the surviving Aviani forces, opened a communication channel to Earth attention, human command. This is the Aviani fleet. We request immediate ceasefire and unconditional surrender terms. Similar messages came from dozens of other species across the scattered Council forces. The proud civilizations that had voted for humanity's destruction now begged for mercy from the species they had tried to exterminate. Admiral Sojin broadcast her response on all frequencies throughout the galaxy. Her voice was calm and cold as she delivered humanity's final judgment. The Galactic Council voted for war against Earth. We voted to end the Council. The democracy has spoken. Your governments are dead. Your military commands are eliminated. Your homeworlds are burning. This is what total war looks like when humans wage it. She paused, letting her words reach every surviving Council ship, every remaining government bunker, every refugee fleeing the destruction of their worlds. Surrender coordinates are being transmitted to all surviving forces. You will submit to unconditional occupation. Your remaining military assets will.